In this video, I'm going to show you how to write data to files in C++. I'm going to show you how to open a file for output, how to write data to the file, and finally how to close the file. Whenever we're working with files, we need to include the file library. So we'll use the ofstream header file in our program. Once that's included, we can define an outputFile stream variable, and its data type is ofstream, or outputFile stream. So here I'm creating an ofstream variable, and I've named it outputFile. The basic steps for working with output files are: we need to first open the file, then write the records to the file, and finally close the file. So first, when we open our file, if we already have a file with the name that we're using, by default it will be erased and replaced with our new file. Here I'm going to create a new file named inventory.txt and associate it with my variable output file. Output file is an object, and when we want to call a function for an object, we'll follow the variable name with a period and then the function name. So here I'm calling the open function, and I'm using the name of the file as a parameter to the open function. Once my file's open, then I can write data to it. And writing data to the output file is going to work just like writing data to our console window with cout. And just like we'll format data on the console window, we want to insert a delimiter between each field in the same record, whether we use tabs, spaces, commas, or some other character. That way, when we read the data later, we'll know where each field begins and ends. When we're at the last field for a record, then we'll write an endl or a \end to end the line, just like we would on the console window. So here I'm writing 3 fields in this record to output file. I put output file where I would put cout, followed by the insertion operator and the variable name. And for the first 2 variables, I followed them with a tab character. The third and final variable is followed with endl. That way, these 3 variables will be on a line by themselves in the file. And just like when we're working with the console window, we may want to format our numeric data. We can use iomanip functions to format our numeric data, just like we did with cout. So here I have a variable of type double, and it has several digits after the decimal place. But if I only want to print 2 digits, then I can use fixed and set precision 2, and now when I write average to the output file, it will write 12.52 followed by an end of line character. Sometimes we're working with groups of data, like with vectors. So if I have multiple items or multiple records, I'm going to use a loop to process each element in the vectors. So I'm going to write 1 element from each vector on a single line. I'll begin by setting up the formatting for my output file, and then I'm going to create a for loop that's going to execute once for each item in the vector or vectors. I'll use I as my iterator variable. I'll execute the loop until I get to the size of the vector and increment my iterator variable with each iteration. Then inside the for loop, I'm going to write the variable for each of the 3 vectors. And I'm going to use my iterator variable to know which subscript or which element to write with this iteration of the for loop. So I'll write names.addI followed by a tab, quantity.addI followed by a tab, and prices.addI followed by an end of line marker. Once we've finished writing the records to the file, we want to close the file. And we always close the file just with the simple close function. We don't want to wait for the operating system to close the file when our program ends. If we had buffered output data, it could be that our data hasn't been physically written to the file yet, and we want to make sure all of our data does get written. And once we're finished with the file, we want to free system resources. So let's compare using output files with cout. The differences are that first we have to declare a file output variable, and we have to open the file before writing to it. Once we're finished, we'll close the file. But similarly, we'll write to the file the same way we write to cout, except we'll just use the file variable name. And like with cout, we can use iomanip for formatting. In this video, we talked about how to open a file, and that if a file already exists with that name, we'll replace that file with a new one. We saw how to write records to the files by using a delimiter between each field and an end-of-line character after the last field. We saw how to use iomanip to format numeric data and how to close the file and why that's necessary.